architecture. So to start, I knew from, late last week that this was going to be a busy week, but I didn't realize how busy it was going to be for my main work, my main job where my main income comes from, which is why I commute to the city every day. That, thankfully, is a job that typically is very predictable in its hours. I'm usually there from during the summer hours, about 9:15 to about, 5:45 or so, because I got to run, catch the train. Sometimes I take a shorter lunch to make sure the hours all even out, and it's pretty consistent. Sometimes I get some work done on the train, but no worries, all pretty predictable. Other architecture jobs I've worked for, very, very common to have very late nights, usually unpredictable. You might be there till 11, midnight. When I was working for Raphael Vignoli, some nights went super, super late. All that goes to say that, so I had some late nights this week, but certainly nothing to complain about. We're doing a lot right now with Avery Fisher Hall, soon be renamed the David Geffen Center, or David Geffen Hall, over at Lincoln Center. And right now we are prepping the, I guess you could say the base drawings for what's finally going to be like an architecture competition. Different architects who might finally get assigned to the project, and we're kind of laying out like, here's the theater scheme that kind of we think makes sense, and use this as your foundation, build off of that. And so there were a lot of iterations of that this week, a lot of building 3D models and doing stuff in CAD and running sightlines, which is our software for, checking what everyone's view is going to be. Nothing to do with VR. That's something that the office has had since like the late 80s or something like that. It uses Excel, goes to CAD. Very cool, very useful. And so there's some late nights with that. And then I worked a little bit on an MIT project we're doing. So those things kind of kept me busy. We did get the laptop. We got an MSI Ghost Pro GS60 or something like that, which is very exciting. The whole laptop thing was kind of up in the air for a bit. Again, what happened there was we decided that the laptop that I was using, which we got last year for like $750, we had a warranty on it. So even though I did something there like closing the screen that cracked the screen, we actually could get it replaced, but they were like, oh, well, it's actually going to cost more to replace this than to just give you something new. So kind of like car insurance, they were like, here's $750 in credit, do what you want with it. So I was like, oh, well, instead of getting a similar laptop, we should really upgrade to something that's going to be able to handle the Oculus and VR stuff we want to do. And so Scott in my office and I, who both know computers really well, we were looking into what made sense as a laptop that could handle the Oculus. Now, we thought we settled on this one, the Ghost Pro, and then I ran into a couple potential problems when looking in the Oculus forums. People basically were saying like, don't get a laptop and expect it to run the Oculus. It's just not built for that right now. And even this laptop, which has some great specs, it uses the GTX 970M, which is the mobile version of the GTX 970, which is the card that's in my home computer, as well as the computer at work. It's like a $300 card that does amazing things, and the mobile version, of course, isn't quite that robust, but still, I expected it would work well enough for what we need to do on a laptop. Would just require a little bit of me optimizing our little architecture-y scenes. But there's a problem that NVIDIA uses a technology called Optimus, which basically tries to save battery power by using the really high-end graphics card for things happening on the computer, and like a really, crappy kind of Intel HD graphics card for anything happening outside the computer, like an external monitor or an Oculus Rift. And then if all you're doing is running Microsoft Word. So in theory, that's a really cool feature for saving battery, but it's bad because it's totally automated. There's no way to control it. And if you want to use something like the Oculus, it's going to want to run off of a much crappier graphics card than the nice one there that you wanted to use. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to find a way, maybe I'll see something someone else has done, or figure out something for myself of how to make sure the Oculus is using the graphics card that it should be using. We'll see how that goes, but the laptop's amazing. I ran a bunch of benchmark tests on it. It runs I installed a few games on there. It actually came with Arkham Knight, the new Batman game, which I actually heard Pete Holmes and the Indoor Kids, one of the Nerdist podcasts I really like, they were talking about how much they love this game, how it really feels like you're Batman, how it's a ton of fun. And PC issues aside, it seems like a lot of those have gotten fixed. I installed that on the new laptop to kind of test out and see how well it works, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. Obviously, I can't crank up the graphics to their full intensity without running into a pretty low frame rate, but I can hit some pretty high benchmarks, and it's incredible that this is coming out of a little 4-pound laptop. I kind of skipped one thing, by the way. We were looking at actually a more expensive laptop. This thing retails for $1,700. I was actually looking at a laptop that was about $2,300, $2,400. The argument being well, this uses the GTX 980, it's got a little bit more of an SSD, hard drive, it's got slightly higher specs all around, and yes, in theory, this will run the Oculus smoothly because it doesn't use this Optimus technology. The problem is the higher-end laptops are just 8 pounds, 8 to 10 pounds, super, super heavy. We did a test of what that'd be like to cart around, and frankly, no one in my office would want to carry that around as a travel laptop. This laptop, by the way, is supposed to be for anyone that needs to, go off and do something high-end with 3D stuff, with rendering, with a big Revit file, or VR stuff. And so there was just no way that anyone was going to carry around something that heavy. So we circled back around and said, you know what, the Ghost Pro, it's going to be great. I think I can get the Oculus stuff to work, so I haven't tested that out yet. I'll let you know how that goes. But yeah, we'll see how that all goes. I'm pretty hopeful. And again, it's a really beautiful laptop, runs great, super light, and I'm excited to take it next week to South Carolina. I'm going to be going to the Gilead Center. It's one of the first projects I ever worked on at FDA when I first got there in 2012. Really big concert hall, really beautiful space from what I think it's going to look like. And yeah, I'll be punch listing, which isn't anything glamorous. I'll be going through and basically shaking all the seats and going through a bunch of check boxes to make sure that everything's being installed the way it's supposed to. So yeah, I'll be in South Carolina for most of this week looking at that. I'm sure it'll be exciting and probably very hot. So architecture. Another quick architecture thing, I finally have everything solved with Apple. Hooray, praise Jesus. When I was doing the Avery Fisher Hall stuff on Monday and Tuesday, we found out that my boss and someone else in the office hadn't communicated. We have like a little Android phone that we use for VR stuff sometimes, and one person in my office thought they were going to take that for VR stuff. My boss needed to take it to London because he needed to use it not just for VR but as an actual phone, and so I was like, crap, really last minute, I need to get this working on the iPhone. And everything was looking pretty good on the iPhone. I think I mentioned last week or the week before I was getting all sorts of black artifacts in the VR model on iPhone that made it look like there was black mold growing everywhere. Not very attractive. So I finally figured it out. It was the GI cache. Basically, any light maps that come over from Android into Apple, even if you rebake everything, it still has that cache somewhere in there, and that's a bad thing. So I cleared that, did a full rebake, everything looked good, loaded up the model. I added some cool new features, like you flip the phone upside down and you can toggle between like a VR mode and a non-VR mode, so if you're doing stuff through Chromecast, it's a great way to do like a presentation style thing, so that's really great. And then I also made it so you can reset the model, and yeah, good stuff. And then you can toggle between other things, because yeah, I'm getting to that point where I'll have tapping be a few things, but then it's also nice to have just a full override, which except for clicking, all you really have for options is tilting the phone. So it's kind of cool working within those limits. App development, I'm really enjoying it. Thanks, Unity.